Hello everyone, welcome to this session on community-led anticipatory action. Please can you join the English channel in the globe at the bottom of the screen, or whichever channel is relevant for you. We have a French speaker and a Spanish speaker in our panel, so if you want to hear what they're saying, you will need to go to the English channel. My name is Heather Brown and I'm a researcher at START Network. Over the past year, I've been managing research looking into the impacts of anticipatory action. This began with a rapid evidence assessment undertaken by a consultant, Felicity Kirsting, looking into the social and economic impacts of anticipatory action and also the cost effectiveness of anticipatory action. To situate the findings of the rapid evidence assessment, START Network hosted 2 roundtables. One was in Madagascar and one was in Zimbabwe. The conversations in those roundtables kept seeming to come back to community-led anticipatory action and the value of community-led anticipatory action, which inspired this assembly session today. In this assembly session, the panel will discuss the current practice of community-led anticipatory action in their organisations. It will discuss the future opportunities for community-led anticipatory action and also the role of collaborative networks in supporting community-led anticipatory action. I would now like to introduce you to the chair and moderator of the panel discussion today, Maria Teresa Nina Espinola Abogado. She is, I'm laughing because she's got a long name. Nina is the Anticipatory Action Lead at Oxfam Philippines. She's an innovator and a thought leader in the space of anticipatory action. Nina kindly peer-reviewed the rapid evidence assessment for us. And I'd also like to note that for Nina, it's 9 p.m. in the Philippines. She's had a full working day, so I'm very grateful for her joining us today to chair this session. Over to you, Nina.
Thank you, Heather, for that introduction and also for framing the session and yeah, for the kind introduction. Please, everyone, you can call me Nina for short because I know I have a very long name. To kick off with the session, good day, everyone, wherever you are in the part of the globe. Welcome to our session on community-led anticipatory action. Today, we are very lucky to be to have distinguished and exceptional panel. And let me introduce them quickly to you. Panelists, resource speakers, please wave your hand as I introduce you so that our participants would recognize you. Let me introduce the panelists in the following order. First, can I introduce Thomas Chuchu, the Health Innovation Partnership and Program Lead of Save the Children International from Zimbabwe. Second, I'd like to introduce Lorraine Nudlu, the Program Director of Organization of the Rural Associations for Progress, or ORAP, based in Zimbabwe. ORAP is the Save the Children's local partner. And then we also have Alexander, or Alex Tripuna, the Head of Disaster Management from Caritas Bangladesh, who's working on anticipatory action for landslides. And then we have Roland Ramanam Perry, the Emergency Manager of CRS Madagascar. Okay, if you can turn on your camera, Roland. Okay. While we were waiting for Roland to turn on his camera, okay, can I also call on and introduce Sandra Miguel, the Project Coordinator for Disaster Risk Reduction and Humanitarian Aid from the Association of Humanitarian Health Services from Guatemala. Okay. We're very grateful to have all of you here. While there's already a reminder earlier, can I just have a quick reminder for everyone? Please feel free to use the chat box throughout the session. You can drop your ideas, reflections, and questions for the panel speakers. We will pick them up later on during the question and answer portion and add your comments. So it will also help us capture a wide range of perspectives. So please don't be shy, share your thoughts and idea in the chat box. And I'm lucky to be assisted also by Kia from Start Network, who will also help us capture your thoughts and questions in the chat box. And if you have enough time, we'll definitely read 1 to 2 questions and then throw them to the speaker so that we'll be having a response from to your answers. Lastly, a quick reminder, the session is available in English, Spanish, and French. So please make sure you selected the preferred language channel so that everyone could fully partake in the discussion. Okay, so without further ado, let us begin with the session by grounding ourselves in practice. I'd like to hear from our 5 esteemed panelists or resource speaker an example of a community-led anticipatory action intervention in your context. We will ask you to highlight how communities shape AA, what outcomes were achieved, and identify one key or great challenge so that we'll be able to focus on them. Let me start with you, Lorraine, as you work closely with the communities.
Thank you for this opportunity, Nina. Greetings, everyone. One example of an anticipatory action was done in Matobo district in Zimbabwe. This was done because there was a significant increase in the poverty deaths for livestock. This was due to a number of factors. One was the pastures had deteriorated to very low levels. Remembering that Matobo district is in region 4 and 5, the semi-arid area of the country. So the pastures had deteriorated. There was also some tick-borne diseases that were affecting the livestock. And so the livestock were dying in numbers. So besides the feed, there was also a lack of water in the area. So at the point of triggering, 1,700 livestock had succumbed to poverty deaths in the month of October 2024, which led to an emergence of reaching out to the communities, directly placing them at the center of the project. And so we went into the communities to conduct some community dialogues where we used a problem tree solution where communities were describing their problems and as well as suggesting some solutions to their problems. And so some of the solutions that they indicated was they needed water because their livestock were dying because of lack of water. So one of the activities was to repair boreholes that were there but not functioning. The other activity was to solarize those that were had high yielding capacities so that we reduce the distances that were traveled by the animals to some watering points, as well as for the community. So the other activity that was prioritized by the community was to provide fodder seed so that the communities will start planting fodder for their animals. We also provided a drought-tolerant seed for the communities as well to reduce on food security issues for both livestock and the animals. We also provided stock feed, which was given to livestock farmers who had 10 and less animals because of the number of livestock farmers in the area. So we prioritized just those who were highly vulnerable. And we also provided some dipping chemicals. So the communities, they played a pivotal role in the implementation of this project. They provided labor. They provided the needed resources that were needed for the construction of the drinking troughs at the solarized water points. They also formed some water point committees so that they can oversee the implementation of the use of the bowls that were repaired, and as well as those that were solarized. There was a steering committee that was formed comprising of the stakeholders from the government line ministries, as well as from the communities comprising of lead farmers, the local leadership, so that they spearheaded all activities according to their needs and their priorities. So they also prioritized the areas that were the anticipatory action was to be implemented. So there was significant improvement of the situation after the implementation. This included the availability of water for both humans and livestock in the area. So the trekking distances for animals to get water was also reduced. And also the project management from the community, the leaders were
Hello, Lorraine.
capacitated to take so that those were the values that were added to the project. Also, the Livestock Association of the district, which is called Matopo Livestock Association, benefited financially from the 25% of the livestock feed sales. It was injected into their association for continued support of the communities. So the key challenges that we faced as we implemented, they included the labor and resources within the district were not as good as when there was no drought. They were already overstretched due to the ongoing drought. So some of the members of the communities were sort of labor constrained, and also in terms of resources to contribute towards the purchase of their stock feed, livestock stock feed. So those were the some of the challenges that we faced as we implemented the livestock response anticipatory action. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. I think earlier you were cut off for a few seconds on my end, but I don't know if the rest were able to hear. That's a very great example, Lorraine. Thank you for sharing your experience, particularly working with the community of using tools, that help them identify the solution, but at the same time also prioritize some of their key needs and the resources. And also, thank you for highlighting at least the key challenge, as you have been sharing are also resources related into operation. But I think one of the great outcome you've quickly mentioned is also the localized governance system and leadership through the steering committee. Now, we have 4 speakers for the first part. I'd also like you to be focused in terms of some of your examples, because I'm sorry we only have a few limited of time. Maybe if you can respond in 2 to 3 minutes as much as possible. But let me turn over quickly to Alex. How about in the context of Bangladesh? Can you share one example and a challenge of community-led anticipatory action that you have implemented? Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Good evening to all from Bangladesh. So we have been working basically for landslide early warning system. In Bangladesh, we still not have yet the early warning system for landslide, but with the community, we have almost at the final stage of to have the community-led early warning system for landslide. So we are basically leading for this, and government has already taken over. I mean, we have the ownership of the government, and also other, I mean, actors like technical actors like Forewarn Bangladesh, and also the RIMES, Regional Integrated Multi-Hazard Early Warning System in Asia Pacific. They are basically exclusively supporting us for the technical issues. But regarding the challenge is very clear that for early warning anticipatory actions, we need the clear trigger and threshold. So for landslide, there was no trigger and threshold because lack of the clear data and information from the community. So after having we installed rain gauges in the hotspots, landslide hotspots, and we tracked and we have available data now. But still, it's the challenge is to have the consensus. As you know, this is such kind of protocol is very sensitive. So still, we need time, but we are working together, and we need more validation from different expert levels. So the specific challenge is the clear, and the specific challenge is the it varies location to location, one hilly area to another hilly area. In Bangladesh we have 6 districts. But in one district, even in one district, there are the rainfall trigger and threshold are quite different. So to have the specific trigger and threshold for specific area, it's very challenging for us right now.
Thank you, Alex. I think that's a great example of how you see when a community and the stakeholders have partnership to begin with developing the triggers. You did mention that it is on this stage, the community is already participating, identifying the source of data, they themselves participate, and that's actually a process of co-creation and co-design. Well, of course, I think because of the challenges that you have in terms of sources of data, I think that is also being a way addressed in your process of also ensuring communities share information, their knowledge, and localize the data as much as possible. But we would love to hear back, Alex, once the trigger system in Bangladesh have been completed. Thank you for sharing that. Now, can I call on Roland to share next, your one community-led example in Madagascar, and also one key challenge that you have faced in Madagascar? Over.
Oui, par rapport à Madagascar, l'action anticipatoire dirigée par la communauté, c'est vraiment dans la mise en œuvre des alertes précoces que la communauté participe activement aux actions anticipatoires. Donc ici à Madagascar, il y a déjà de stratégies GRC, et pendant l'alerte zone, c'est la dernière couleur d'alerte avant l'atterrissage du cyclone, et qui correspond vraiment dans les fenêtres anticipation. La communauté elle-même qui s'organise aux évacuations dans les sites d'hébergement, et l'État appuie tout simplement ces initiatives. Donc, c'est vraiment les membres de la communauté avec les jeunes au niveau de comité de base qui font cette organisation et la mise en œuvre. Merci.
Thank you, Roland. I think that presents a different angle, and I love how you've highlighted the role of the youth actually, not only in terms of co-developing the early warning system, but in terms of organization and dissemination. And maybe it's also good to hear later on if there are other stakeholders that have been involved. But zooming into your sharing, I think it's a good opportunity to always be reminded that as we linked earlier on to developing the trigger system, now this is a good example of how communities actually participated and led the development of early warning system in partnership with the stakeholders and also our government. So wonderful and very concrete example of models of community-led AA. And lastly, can I ask also Sandra to please share an example in Guatemala of how AA is actually community-driven or community-led?
Muchas gracias, muy buenas tardes, buenos días, mucho gusto. Gracias por invitarnos para compartir esta experiencia sobre acciones anticipatorias en Guatemala. Yo represento a una organización local que se llama ASEXA. Y primero comentar de que Guatemala está ubicada en la región centroamericana y la comunidad de la que voy a compartirles está ubicada en el norte del país. La comunidad se llama Laguna Ixcoch y está aproximadamente a 596 kilómetros de la ciudad capital. Es una comunidad que está bastante aislada, con servicios básicos bastante limitados. La señal telefónica también es limitada. Hay 43 familias y estas 43 familias hacen que hayan 146 personas, especialmente la mayoría son de la población étnica que nosotros aquí le llamamos quechí, ¿verdad? Esa es una particularidad importante de esta comunidad. El nombre de la comunidad se atribuye a que dentro de la comunidad existe un cuerpo de agua que aquí le llamamos laguna, ¿verdad? Esta laguna tiene aproximadamente 7.356 metros de diámetro y es la laguna que se alimenta de uno de los ríos más grandes que aquí hay en Guatemala, que se llama Usumacinta. Este río divide Guatemala con México. Y esta situación es la que a la comunidad la pone en riesgo debido a inundaciones repentinas, ¿verdad? En el 2023, lamentablemente, murió una de las personas que estaba iniciando a participar con nosotros dentro de las acciones anticipatorias que estábamos promoviendo. Y también por las características geográficas, que es plana la comunidad, pues las pérdidas de sus cosechas de granos básicos en realidad es alta, ¿verdad? Entre un 80 o un 100%. Entonces, ante esta situación es que en el marco del programa de innovación con apoyo de Star Network es que impulsamos la conformación de grupos innovadores en la comunidad y se hizo un análisis de riesgos a desastres y se conformaron varios grupos. Dentro de ellos, pues quedó un grupo que estaba proponiendo el sistema de alerta temprana. Y un sistema de alerta temprana que monitoree, que le diera información de acuerdo a las características, ¿verdad? Porque es población quechí. Es una población también que el 50%, por ejemplo, no saben leer. Entonces, esa situación fue el motivo por la cual un grupo de innovadores plantearon diseñar este sistema de alerta temprana, pero es un sistema de alerta temprana que en realidad complementa conocimientos y prácticas que las personas mayores de la comunidad ya realizan en la observancia de lo que está pasando alrededor. Entonces, nos pareció súper interesante, ¿verdad? Considerar esta complementariedad, aunque en realidad este conocimiento y esta práctica creo que ese es un poco el desafío que ya tenemos, porque es un conocimiento y práctica que muy poco es reconocida por la entidad oficial, ¿verdad? Entonces es más reconocido un sistema de alerta con instrumentalización, podríamos decir lo más común que se hace con los sistemas meteorológicos que se instalan en comunidades. En este caso es la particularidad también que tiene esta comunidad. El sistema tiene un complemento auditivo, un complemento visual y de mensajería. Y creo que últimamente hemos ido viendo cómo beneficia a la misma comunidad y beneficia a comunidades vecinas. Tiene un identificador también, el mismo proceso completo de identificación de familias en alto riesgo y un protocolo de actuación en el idioma quechí. Aproximadamente ahorita el sistema les da la alerta 6 horas antes de que la laguna empiece a elevar su nivel, ¿verdad? Por las diferentes escalas que se han instalado. Y eso les permite evacuar, ¿verdad? A las familias y también mínimamente sacar los medios de vida que tienen resguardados en su vivienda. Otro punto importante, creo yo, de este sistema es que ha motivado no solamente al grupo innovador que propuso, que es de la misma comunidad, sino logró vincular a la estructura organizativa, porque es de beneficio para toda la comunidad y entonces ya este sistema lo lidera toda la comunidad, ¿verdad? Con el grupo innovador. Entonces ahí hay un fortalecimiento de la gobernanza también importante para poder anticiparse. También es importante mencionar que ellos mismos ya manejan el sistema, ¿verdad? Por ejemplo, están siempre pendientes de que si está funcionando y si algo no está funcionando, también están viendo qué es la falla que tiene el sistema para poder resolver. Eso también ya nos da un mensaje de apropiación de parte de la comunidad. Y hay otros dos elementos que creo yo que con eso voy a terminar. Uno de ellos es que como al principio, cuando nosotros empezamos a llegar a la comunidad, es una comunidad que estaba bastante aislada, pero luego de todo el proceso que se ha llevado de empoderamiento de la misma comunidad, últimamente, pues la entidad oficial que aquí en Guatemala es la CONRED, pues se ha interesado también en apoyarles, ¿verdad? Y eso para nosotros es importante para la sostenibilidad. De hecho, ahorita en las simulaciones que se van a hacer a nivel nacional, la Laguna Xcoch va a ser como un modelo de comunidad que ya está bastante avanzada en la preparación y que cuenta con un sistema de alerta dentro de su comunidad y que beneficia a otras comunidades. Luego, lo otro es que hemos ido logrando también en acompañamiento a la comunidad de que se involucren otras entidades gubernamentales como el Ministerio de Salud y el Ministerio de Agricultura, ¿no? Por las mismas condiciones que ellos ya tienen y también eso es un acercamiento, pero también es el empoderamiento que la comunidad misma ha ido realizando. ¿Cuáles son los retos que tenemos? Todos así a nivel general y muy rápido. Uno es que para ampliar el impacto se necesita mucha inversión. Ahorita tenemos el reto de mejorar aún más con ellos, porque ellos lo están también manifestando, ese número de horas para poder anticiparse mejor. Ahorita tienen, con lo que está establecido en el sistema, aproximadamente entre 6 y 4 horas. La idea es que puedan tener 12 horas más que les permita resguardar sus cosechas y eso tiene que ser con una inversión, ¿verdad? Y también con una responsabilidad mucho más comprometida de la entidad gubernamental. Luego lo otro es que el otro reto que tenemos es lograr que el sistema oficial haga ese reconocimiento de ese conocimiento y práctica desde la cosmovisión de los pueblos para poder vincular los dos elementos que se puedan complementar y eso pues nos daría un elemento importante para la anticipación con mucho más efectos positivos para las comunidades. Por ahí me quedo. Muchas gracias por el espacio.
Thank you, Sandra. I think that's very interesting to hear of how popular and very easy to understand early warning system is, particularly as the model and mechanism in Guatemala is actually led by the indigenous people or community themselves. I really love how you are describing, how the system works. It is very visual, and even sound system is more linked based on their familiarity with their culture, and at the same time on how it helped them actually to understand the early warning system. We do recognize some of the key challenges that you have mentioned, particularly that this system is not yet recognized by the local authority. Particularly, it's because it's not seen as based in scientific parameters, and therefore it also challenges how to scale up with the lack of resources, but also some even capacities actually to continue it. And I think later on we will give you the space, because I think you might be still tackling some of these challenges, if you can elaborate on the succeeding part of our panel discussion. But thank you, everyone. I think we've heard different models of and very diverse models of community-led anticipatory action. We've seen trends of how communities, particularly if they are the drivers of the design of the system of implementation, through how they prioritize, how they act on it, and also some of the innovations that you are mentioning that is being done at this stage. Then it would be continued by the community, because it not only builds ownership, but in terms of trusting the system that works locally based on their context, realities, and culture. While we also hear challenges that you have already mentioned, from access to reliable and robust data to limited resources and uneven capacities. Having this as a frame in terms of your current practice, let me quickly shift to another part of the session where I'd like to discuss and ask your thoughts about the future of community-led AA. We will explore the future of community-led anticipatory action, and we will actually ask one question to each panel members, and then we will allow them to actually share their thoughts for around 2 to 3 minutes. So be focused in terms of one key takeaway when you hear your specific question. So to start, imagining the future of community-led AA, with the challenge of not only how to scale it up, but actually how do we genuinely actually do it in practice. Let me first ask the question to Lorraine. Lorraine, what does community-led actually means in terms of ownership and leadership? I know this was already mentioned a while ago, but I think based on your own experience and also hearing the other panelists, how do you define community-led in terms of ownership and leadership?
Thank you, Nina. Community-led ownership and leadership refers to the active involvement of local communities in decision-making in the implementation of the anticipatory action. This involves active participation. It involves contextualizing the situation according to the cultural context of that area. It also means decision-making power by the communities themselves, the leadership, as well as coming up with some frameworks for sustainable implementation, management, and accountability, so that the anticipatory action are sustainable within the communities. So this is how I can define community-led and leadership. This is different from engagement. Engagement can only be a way of giving instruction, and is normally a top-down approach. but involvement and participation leads to community-led ownership and leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. I think that's very well said. And what I picked up from there is that community-led really should have active participation and decision-making from the community themselves. And it's good that you're differentiating the definition between engagement and ownership and leadership. And I think that that's really helpful to imagine also. Then for others that would start doing these practices, it would become also as an indicator and guide and a qualifier of community-led ownership and leadership. I'd like to pose another question to Thomas. Where do you think can we expand community roles in anticipatory action? Is it, in the aspect of forecasting? Is it also in triggers or co-designing implementation, maybe accountability or elsewhere? Where do you think where we should put more emphasis to expand community roles to advance community-led AA?
Thank you so much, Nina, and thank you so much, colleagues, for what you've mentioned before in terms of the examples. I could say that all these areas are potential areas for expansion, which could actually give us the community more roles that they can have in terms of anticipatory action. But at the moment, I'll just mention maybe 3 key areas that I feel these might be a future in terms of expansion. The first one is anticipatory action plans, which we were also able to do when we were implementing the Matoa project in Zimbabwe, where communities are able to come up with their own anticipatory action plans and are able to review these plans from time to time and leading this process from the community leadership perspective that Lorraine mentioned. The second aspect is the issue of co-designing. Co-designing is critical. Remember the example that we were given by Judith on early warning indigenous systems in Guatemala, where the indigenous systems are there, but sometimes they may not be integrated. So co-designing of these forecasting systems, co-designing of the trigger systems, indigenous indicators are there. Sometimes people know the type of wind that is coming, that this wind might be dangerous. They know the type of direction of the rain, where it is coming from, and certain plants in a particular period can actually show in terms of triggers that can even show in our case, which is the drought situation. So this is a critical component. Then the last one is on monitoring and evaluation, which is about accountability, where the communities themselves know how well prepared they might have been or they need to be. Therefore, if they are able to then monitor that anticipatory action, it would be better because they are the ones that are able to actually say, I think these actions have gotten to a level where we feel we are more prepared than us to come with an indicator where we say, I think they are prepared now, but yet they could not be prepared at a particular point in time. So, Nina, I can say that those are the 3 critical areas that I feel we can see the expansion of community roles in anticipatory action. Thank you.
Perfect, Thomas. I love the power of 3, when we focus 3 core messages and core ideas. I think this will also be good to be a roadmap in terms of how to advance community-led AA. You've started with planning, ensuring that this is community-led. And that second one, this is co-designed, whether whatever stage you are in your AA process, it should be co-designed with the community and to have a joint solution also together. And lastly, you put emphasis on the value of monitoring and evaluation for accountability. And maybe if I would add, to ensure that this is feedback, in the process, in the program, in the system, so that, it would improve or enhance the system or the practices in general. So thank you for that. I love it, the power of 3. Sandra, can I go back to you? Can I ask you, how do we ensure that the most vulnerable voices shape community-led AA?
Sí, muchas gracias. Tal vez comentar un poco más el tema de la experiencia en el programa de innovación que nosotros estamos impulsando. Este programa tiene una particularidad de que lo que promueve es que todo lo que se va generando desde la comunidad sean ellos mismos quienes lo propongan, lo identifiquen y lo propongan. Y es un ejercicio que requiere presupuesto flexible, ¿verdad? Y es una forma que creemos nosotros que da de alguna manera esa facilidad de tomar decisiones en la comunidad. Y eso también va disminuyendo esas modalidades que tenemos a veces de acompañamiento a las comunidades cuando ya llevamos un proyecto prediseñado o diseñado solo para implementar. Entonces, el programa de innovación para nosotros es otra modalidad que en realidad le da esa facilidad a la comunidad. Entonces, es una forma, creo yo, que puede ser muy interesante para que se pueda ampliar como modalidad metodológica. Y eso hace posible, cabal, ese cambio también que buscamos a largo plazo de esa visión de cambio de poder, ¿no? De que las comunidades y las personas afectadas en realidad tomen sus propias decisiones, garantizándoles, por supuesto, el acompañamiento en lo que ellos también vayan identificando que necesitamos o que necesitan. También es importante ahí resaltar que para nosotros, un asunto bien importante que tenemos con el programa es que em, hay una particularidad de participación de los grupos más afectados, en este caso por inseguridad alimentaria, por inundaciones, que es el caso de Laguna Escoch. La mayoría de cosas que se comprometen a hacer en la comunidad las están impulsando las mujeres, ¿verdad? Por supuesto, eso puede tener también una identificación de doble carga de trabajo para las mujeres, que también hay que ponerlo sobre la mesa, pero es importante cómo la voz de las mujeres, de la juventud y de las personas mayores que son más afectadas también ya se ponen a discusión para que haya una atención o acciones anticipatorias diferenciadas. Eso de momento. También la otra parte, tal vez rápido, es cómo se va involucrando a las entidades gubernamentales para que asuman esa responsabilidad en este tema de acciones anticipatorias, pero tal vez un poquito más allá, que tiene que ver con la reducción de riesgos a desastres en todas las acciones que realizan las entidades gubernamentales en el apoyo que dan a las comunidades.
Thank you so much, Sandra. I think this is very related to what Lorraine have also mentioned earlier, that to ensure that the most vulnerable sectors in our community have voices in shaping AA, it begins with participation and making the decision. As you have said, making the decision who to prioritize, who are the most vulnerable. Is it a thematic area in terms of livelihood or food security? And other things. But at the same time, when they participate in ensuring that the vulnerable sector have a strong voice actually in leading these processes, it also informs plans and designs and future actions. So I think that's a very good way to actually focus not only maybe as you have learning now on innovation, but also how it is shaping the practice of community-led AA, not maybe in Guatemala alone, but also it could, be also the guide steps of other communities that is also practicing or starting to initiate community-led AA. So thank you for that definition and focusing again on the value of decision-making and ensuring the most vulnerable sectors have a voice in community-led processes. Last two questions for our panelists for this round on thinking of what would be the future of AA. I'd like to ask Alex, this might be long, but this is more related to the idea of policies, financing, or partnership. Maybe you can choose one of on this three aspect, but what do you think, how can we make community leadership or community-led AA be sustainable in the aspect of policies, financing, or partnerships?
Yes, I think I have already mentioned regarding the ownership. So we have ownership from the government part, as this has, I mean, the landslide early warning system, protocol and the anticipatory action already has been included in government's, standing order on disaster in Bangladesh. So regarding the policy, that means government has already the framework and for protocol, but for protocol to implement actionable the plan and implement, we need protocol, the early action protocol for landslide. So uh, a team like regarding the partnership. So this is not for all basically, who have exclusive experience and who has the evidence of working on this issue. Uh, uh, the partnership of those is required here. And for the community level, you know that in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, where the landslide is prone, highly landslide prone areas is located, are located there. Uh, all the indigenous people, they are not victim basically here. uh, who are the victim? The external, the settlement, the settler we call, who are from the external communities, who are now they are residing there from the external outside of the Chittagong Hill Tracts. So they are basically victim, as they don't have knowledge, clear knowledge. Regarding the community-led landslide early warning system, so the at-risk population must be included in the uh, early warning system protocol developments. The process. So trust should be built on the system, and also the communication, like that regarding the anticipatory action, we have 4 pillars. So in each pillars, the important thing is the risk communication, to have the tailor-made message to them, the impact-based messages. So in this regard, the language is also very important, because there are many, almost 13 language speaking community is living there. So the message should be the most localized, with the understandable messages, tailored made messages for them. And the finance, definitely for the external support is required for them, because it's that's why last 30 years the people of the landslide prone areas are not able to address this issue. But very recently, due to the external support like financing, ready financing, so they are on right track to have a good landslide early warning system and protocol for almost right now in the 6 districts, more than 2.5 million people are at risk of landslide.
Thank you, Alex. You've touched a very important topic of how this could be sustainable, particularly starting with inclusive approaches. Also ensuring that these processes are developed with the at-risk population, so it builds trust in the system, and at the same time to ensure that there is effective communication and customized to the local languages. And of course, financing is always an aspect to ensure that these systems and approaches would be sustainable. Thank you for those insights, Alex. And lastly, to finish off this round, I'd like to ask one question to Roland. Roland, what do you think is one key innovation that could drive the future of community-led aid?
Oui, je pense que l'innovation clé pour développer la participation communautaire sur les actions anticipatoires, c'est de utiliser pour s'assurer des moyens de communication appropriés, pour s'assurer que tout le monde aient les mêmes informations par rapport aux risques. Donc, je pense que cet aspect-là, c'est l'un des piliers de Early Warning for All. Et même les autres éléments que Alex a déjà parlé tout à l'heure, peut-être que c'est le moment actuellement d'appuyer l'initiative communautaire dans la mise en œuvre des activités anticipatoires, c'est-à-dire aider les communautés de base sur la gouvernance locale des risques en appuyant l'organisation communautaire, s'il y a des matériels qu'ils ont besoin, ou bien d'autres types d'appui, comme Alex a dit, comme les financements, par exemple. Donc, et aussi, je pense, pour assurer la qualité de ces actions au niveau communautaire, il faut donner un peu plus d'espace pour les groupes vulnérables dans l'élaboration des plans et aussi sensibiliser les autorités locales à tous les niveaux pour qu'ils prennent un peu plus d'attention sur la considération des groupes vulnérables pour que les plans élaborés soient axés un peu plus sur les soutiens et la protection des groupes plus vulnérables. Merci.
Thank you, Roland, for that. I think the key takeaway here is accessibility, whether it's accessibility to communication, accessibility to technology that would enable more the communities to have access to information, accessibility to resources, and accessibility to indicators or performance matrix that would help, more to feedback what the community prioritizes to ensure that their community-led AA would become sustainable and that could be more improved. So thank you for that, Roland. I'm sorry we don't have enough time to read some of the questions, but we will ensure that we will give this to our panel of speakers, and then maybe later on this could all be responded, especially we are able to identify your names in the chat box. And we're actually almost wrapping up in our session. And this will be a sort of fire chat, quick question and answer to our panel speakers. And that would also be your final thought or remarks for the session. And we would like to round up, our session by specifically asking questions around the roles of different stakeholders. How do we collaborate and our priorities to ensure that community-led AA would advance or would scale up? So a quick question to you, Alex, this is a rapid fire session. How can START Network better support members to advance community-led AA, particularly maybe around also focusing indigenous or traditional knowledge or other support maybe that is needed?
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, Start Network, you know that Start Network has diversified members. So very well mapping. I mean, all members are from from the local. So they are connected with the community. I mean, the at-risk communities. So regarding connectivity, I mean, even Start Network can be the space of sharing all knowledges and experiences of across the globe. So this is a very good, the space to exchange of all experiences, expertise, everything. Because local people has their local knowledge, but the AI, the technologies is not there with them. So it can be, the AI can be played a complementary role. For the anticipatory action. Another thing is that already start is the implementing the DRF, disaster risk financing. So this can be continued, for long term, for the financial, the arrangement. Another one is that the capacity building, the organizational capacity building is doing by the Start Network. So this can be, the anticipatory action can be included in this the organizational capacity building, the process of the Start Network. And so that's all for now.
Thank you
Thank you.
much, Alex. I think you've touched on a very important topic on the power of network, and where you see, Start Network would be able to continue to become a platform to connect, share knowledge and experiences, have access to pool, funds to support capacity building and system strengthening. So thank you for that insight, Alex. Quickly, I'll shift to Lorraine. How about Lorraine? How about roles of different stakeholders like donors, peer INGOs, or local organizations, or maybe other networks? What do you think are the roles that they can play to support continuing advancing community-led leading?
Thank you, Dina. The international NGOs, the local and the CPOs can support the anticipatory actions through facilitating their capacity building, also advocating for the inclusion of the indigenous knowledge into the anticipatory planning process. So we need to come up with a policy that will enable communities to use their indigenous knowledge systems into planning and also into tracking or getting some early warnings through their indigenous systems. We can also have the CPOs giving some feedback to the stakeholders that matter most, that bring in the funding, so they can play a pivotal role in providing information as it is obtaining on the ground, so that it shapes the designing of the anticipatory actions. The donors can also facilitate the creation of some knowledge hubs where various stakeholders can share information on disaster preparedness and some planning as well. So the donors can also support the co-designing of early warning systems, making sure that the tools are drawn from locally available resources so that they become sustainable, and the use of it becomes very easy for the communities. Thank you so much. That's my submission.
Thank you, Lorraine. I think this is very much still connected to what Alex mentioned. You have highlighted still, the role of different stakeholders to support in capacity building, but also highlighting, I think that's very good that you have, I also recommended a policy that would enable, to use indigenous knowledge to be part of early warning system, and also the setting up or continuously strengthening knowledge on disaster preparedness and community-led AA that could, draw stronger experiences and evidences of how the impacts of community-led AA would be. Next to my question is that I will look at Thomas. I think if you will be able to identify, Thomas, one collaborative practice that would best, demonstrate meaningful community leadership in AA, what would it be, and how do you think it can be scaled up or adopted?
Okay. Thank you so much, Nina. I think one of the key aspects that can be taken is actually the localization approach, which is working with community-based organizations and structures where international NGOs and donors are playing more or less of a supporting role. And I think some of the supporting roles have already been mentioned by Lorraine. This, I feel, can be an initiative or community-led initiative that can be scaled up, where anyone who needs to scale it up should be able to identify and work with the structures that are there and ensure that these structures take a leading role. Their voices are heard and they are fully inclusive in how they are able to express themselves and lead this initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think still, the key is localization to scale it up. And I think, that really is always part of the plan. And hopefully through this type of session that would still push through and support it. And speaking of localization, this could be connected to my question to Sandra. Sandra, what do you think is one of the barriers to limit community leadership in AA? And maybe one concrete recommendation how this could be addressed?
Ya, bueno, yo quería, bueno, profundizar también un poquito más en la otra pregunta, pero quizás no me va a dar tiempo, entonces me voy a enfocar a lo que estás preguntando, niña, muchas gracias. Bueno, yo pienso de que en este momento que estamos viviendo con una, pues al final de cuentas, una desalentadora situación con la reducción de financiamiento, como organizaciones que convergemos, locales, nacionales e internacionales, pues tenemos una barrera importante en el sentido de que a veces estamos dispersamente trabajando, ¿verdad? Y eso, pues de alguna manera, pues duplica esfuerzos que ahora pues tenemos que eficientizar. Tenemos que reconocer un valor y un aprendizaje que tenemos en el camino que tenemos de trabajo, de acompañamiento a las comunidades y también poner sobre la mesa la discusión de la descolonización. Yo creo que ha avanzado bastante en esa discusión en el marco de ir haciendo un cambio. Y ese prácticamente es un obstáculo. Pensamos que nosotros llegamos a las comunidades a capacitarlos, a fortalecerlos y no reconocemos que hay dentro una capacidad de resiliencia importante que podemos aprovechar para complementarnos y enfocarnos a la anticipación y a la reducción. Entonces, necesitamos nosotras como organizaciones ir cambiando estas prácticas y actitudes. Y desde ese punto de vista, vamos a facilitar y hacer real ese ejercicio con el que estamos abogando de la localización y de ceder el poder también a las personas más afectadas. Necesitamos seguir cuestionando y cuestionando el desequilibrio de poder que existe en las acciones humanitarias para poder unirnos y también buscar que haya más contribución de aporte en el sentido de experiencias de trabajo y que desde este punto podamos también dialogar y negociar fondos más flexibles que le permitan a las poblaciones afectadas tomar sus propias decisiones para la anticipación, pero también para la reducción de riesgos a desastres.
Thank you so much, Sandra. I think you've highlighted a very important point on ensuring that there's a harmonized collaboration between different stakeholders because of the duplication of work, but maybe even also resources. And at the same time, I think we've been hearing a lot on your thoughts and recommendation on how to ensure that we will be genuinely implementing localization. But you have mentioned about shifting not only perspective, but also shifting behavior to embrace, localization. And you mentioned about shifting the power to ensure that, communities will be more empowered on these processes. Thank you for that very valuable insight. And last question for the panel to share, their last thought also. Can I ask you, Roland, what do you think would be the single most important priority to advance community-led AA?
Nina, for
Donc,
me,
je pense que la priorité, c'est de chercher de toute alternative des décisions pour appuyer l'initiative communautaire dans la planification, la mise en œuvre des actions anticipatoires, y compris l'octroi du budget pour la mise en œuvre et le renforcement des capacités des collectivités pour élaborer un plan sensible au genre. Donc, l'un d'autres priorités, je pense que il est maintenant temps de voir la nouvelle technologie, surtout dans les pays sous-développés, pour s'assurer que les systèmes d'alerte précoce pour tous soient réalisés. Donc, pour cela, il y a des cell broadcasts, par exemple. Et il y a aussi les Warners. Donc, par rapport à cette déclencheur d'alerte-là, ils ont bien besoin de soutien matériel, des soutiens organisationnels. Donc, je pense que pour que la communauté puisse mener à temps et de façon stratégique leur action si anticipatoire, donc il faut voir cet aspect-là. Des points de vue par rapport aux bailleurs de fonds, parce que la collectivité, la communauté des bases sont vraiment nombreuses et je suis conscient que on a besoin beaucoup de fonds pour soutenir toutes ces collectivités-là qui sont menacées par les cyclones, des inondations, d'autres catastrophes naturelles. Mais peut-être qu'il faut voir, réviser un peu les budgets pour la préparation, comme la réserve nationale, par exemple, pour que les acteurs humanitaires puissent soutenir bien avant la saison cyclonique cette organisation au niveau communautaire pour qu'ils puissent mener les activités au niveau de leur fontaine ou bien leur quartier. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Roland. I think you made a very good point on driving collective action so that community-led AA would advance. You focused and highlighted also on the role of capacity building, but at the same time to ensure that technology is now leveraged in terms of how communities understand it to improve early warning system, but at the same time gathering of information. And you put emphasis again on the value of local governance through localization, and to ensure that it would be sustainable is then an important topic on access to risk financing. So thank you so much to all panelists. Please, everyone, if you can do a virtual clap, give a virtual clap to all our panelists. Apologies, we are over time by 7 minutes, but can allow me to just quickly close with a brief synthesis of what we have heard so far. And I think the evidences of how community-led AA is actually being implemented using various models. On the current practice, I think community leadership is at the core of it to ensure that we can strengthen relevance, trust, and at the same time inclusion in community-led AA. But of course, challenges remains, particularly in terms of ensuring sustainability, equity, and at the same time of how we really genuinely implement localization approaches. I think most of our panel of speakers have highlighted the importance and the future of community-led AA by expanding really the roles that they are actively playing a role in terms of designing, but at the same time decision-making, amplifying their voices, ensuring also that finances and policies align while we leverage innovation. And innovation in the time of exponential growth of technology, and at the same time in the advent of utilizing AI is also key. And lastly, on collaboration, I think what our speakers have mentioned basically is that the success of advancing community-led AA actually depends on collaboration and partnership across donors, INGOs, local actors, and networks, and the value of what START Network can bring actually to fulfill all of this roadmap to advance community-led AA. So by working all together, hopefully we're not only removing the barriers, but we're actually enabling communities to live. With that, I thank everyone for participating in this session. And together with our panel of speakers, we are thanking everyone, particularly also Dr. Heather for hosting this session, and at the same time, Kia, who have been taking note of the key questions in the chat group. Just apologies, we don't have time to actually respond to all of this. But thank you everyone for being here and for listening. And we hope you have your own key takeaways of what models do you think our panel speakers have shared could also help your communities and your practice. This officially ends our session. Thank you so much. And please let us stay true and advance community-led anticipatory action together.